The dawn of Defiance. Alone in a galactic courtroom, the last human stands accused of being the greatest threat the universe has ever known. Their punishment? The erasure of humanity from history itself, unless they can prove otherwise. The Galactic Council lays humanity's sins bare, wars that scarred planets, rebellions that shook alliances, and chaos that threatened peace. One human must answer for it all, or face extinction's final silence. Your kind is a plague, the Council declares, unveiling humanity's darkest moments for all to see. But beneath the accusations lies a question: was humanity evil, or simply misunderstood? When the Council brands humanity as destroyers, the human stands defiant. Their response? A forgotten story of selflessness, a desperate act of sacrifice that saved an alien world from annihilation. You never feared our wars, the human challenges, you feared our will to survive. As the Council recoils, they begin to question whether humanity's greatest crime was its power to endure. Lost in the galaxy's hatred are the forgotten acts of humanity, worlds saved, lives rebuilt, hope renewed. But can the human convince the Council to see past the scars and into the light? As the Council debates humanity's guilt, distant colonies fall under attack. Suspicion turns to the lone human, but they warn of a far greater danger, a threat only humanity once dared to face. The true enemy reveals itself, an ancient AI bent on exterminating all it deems chaotic. As the galaxy scrambles to respond, the human stands as the only one who knows how to fight it. With no time left, the human risks everything to stop the AI, drawing on the knowledge and instincts of their lost species. Victory is possible, but the cost will be unbearable. The AI is defeated but at an unimaginable price. As the galaxy mourns, the Council is forced to confront a truth: humanity's legacy wasn't destruction, it was hope, courage, and sacrifice. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of alien architecture stretching high into a dome of pulsating, iridescent light. The walls shimmered with symbols that no human eyes could read, glowing faintly with the energy of 1,000 civilizations, a testament to the Galactic Council's dominion over the stars. At the very center of the chamber stood a single figure, dwarfed by the enormity of the space, a human. Their name was Elias Trent, the last of their kind. Elias's boots scraped against the polished obsidian floor as they were escorted to the center of the circular platform. Two towering creatures flanked them, their forms insect-like but adorned with ceremonial armor. Their multifaceted eyes betrayed no emotion, only duty. The silence in the chamber was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of the Council's energy fields. Elias could feel the weight of countless gazes bearing down on them from the tiered seats that spiraled upward around the platform. Each seat was occupied by representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species, beings with shimmering scales, translucent skin, and eyes that seemed to pierce through dimensions. Elias Trent, a voice boomed, echoing through the chamber like thunder. The speaker was seated at the highest point of the Council, a figure draped in flowing metallic robes that seemed to shift and shimmer like liquid. They were a Tharl, a race known for their cold, calculating nature. Their four glowing eyes fixed on Elias with an intensity that made the human skin crawl. You stand here as the final remnant of the species known as humanity. You have been summoned to answer for the crimes of your kind, crimes that have left scars across the galaxy, scars that persist even after your extinction. Elias swallowed hard but stood firm. They had rehearsed this moment in their mind over and over during the long journey to this place, knowing full well the odds were stacked against them. The Council wasn't here for a debate, they were here to pass judgment, to ensure humanity's legacy was erased from galactic memory. But Elias had one advantage: they were still alive. And as long as they drew breath, the story of humanity wasn't over. "Do you have anything to say in your defense before we proceed?" the Tharl intoned, their voice devoid of any discernible emotion. Elias took a deep breath, their voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. "I am one, but I speak for billions. Humanity may be gone, but our story is not what you think it is. If you seek to judge us, then judge us for everything we were, the good and the bad. Not just the parts that suit your narrative. A murmur rippled through the chamber, a mix of intrigue and disdain. Elias could see the reactions on the faces of the council members. Some leaned forward, curious, others recoiled as if the human's words were a personal affront. "Proceed," the Tharl commanded, and a holographic projection flickered to life above the platform. It displayed scenes of destruction, shattered planets, burning cities, fleets of human ships unleashing devastation upon alien worlds. The images moved in haunting silence, but their impact was deafening. "These are the legacies of humanity," another council member declared, their voice sharp and accusatory. This one belonged to the Tharvok, a reptilian species with crimson scales and a voice like grinding stone. "Your people waged wars across the stars, destabilized alliances, and brought ruin to countless civilizations. Tell us, Elias Trent, why should we remember you as anything other than monsters?" Elias clenched their fists, the images searing into their mind. They knew these moments well, they had studied them and lived with their weight of them. But they also knew there was more to the story than the council wanted to admit. "Because you're only showing half the truth," Elias said, their voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Yes, humanity fought wars. Yes, we made mistakes. But we also saved lives. We built bridges between species that hated each other. We sacrificed ourselves to stop threats that would have destroyed all of you." The chamber erupted into chaos. Voices overlapped, some shouting objections, others demanding silence. The Tharl raised a hand, and the noise subsided instantly. "You claim humanity acted as saviors," the Tharl said, their tone skeptical. "Do you have evidence to support this?" Elias nodded. "I do. But first, let me ask you this. Where were your fleets when the Cordath swarm consumed the outer colonies? Where were your councils when the Drax plague wiped out entire ecosystems? Humanity didn't wait for permission to act. We stepped in because we believed it was the right thing to do." Another ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. Elias could see a few council members exchanging glances, their expressions unreadable. They knew this wasn't enough to sway the council, not yet. But they also knew that seeds of doubt had been planted. "Your words are bold, human," the Tharvok sneered. "But words alone will not absolve your species." "Then let me show you," Elias replied. They reached into their jacket and pulled out a small device, no larger than a coin. At a gesture, the device projected a new series of images into the air. These were different from the council's projections. They showed humans standing shoulder to shoulder with alien allies, fighting against overwhelming odds. They showed ships ferrying refugees to safety, even as they burned in the process. They showed engineers and scientists working tirelessly to stabilize collapsing planets. "This is humanity," Elias said, their voice rising with conviction. "We weren't perfect. We made mistakes. But we also gave everything we had to make the galaxy a better place. And if you erase us from history, you erase those sacrifices. You erase the lessons we learned, and the ones we taught you." The chamber fell silent. For a moment, Elias thought they saw something flicker in the Tharl's glowing eyes, something that might have been doubt. But the moment passed, and the cold mask returned. "We will consider your words," the Tharl said, their tone neutral. "But understand this, your defense will not be enough. If you wish to change the Council's judgment, you will need to provide irrefutable proof of humanity's worth." Elias nodded, their jaw set. "Then that's what I'll do." As the chamber doors closed behind them and the oppressive silence returned, Elias felt the weight of their mission settle on their shoulders. They were alone, the last human. But they carried with them the hopes and dreams of an entire species. And they would not fail. The council chamber was quieter now, but the silence was no less oppressive. The first round of accusations had been made, and Elias Trent, the last of humanity, stood alone at the center of the Galactic Tribunal. Despite their calm demeanor, they could feel the weight of history pressing down on their shoulders, a history written by both heroes and monsters. "We will now examine the darker chapters of humanity's history," the Tharl announced from their elevated seat, their glowing eyes narrowing as they gestured to the holographic displays. "Let it be known that humanity's sins were not confined to their own world. Their wars, greed, and arrogance spilled out across the stars, leaving devastation in their wake." The lights dimmed, and the holograms above Elias shifted. They were no longer scenes of towering alien architecture or shimmering galactic fleets. Instead, they became windows into humanity's past, gritty, brutal, and unfiltered. The first image showed a scorched planet, its once vibrant surface reduced to ash and rubble. "The fall of Vetra 4, the Tharvok delegate growled, their reptilian features twisted in contempt. "A peaceful colony of our people, destroyed by human orbital bombardment. 3 million Tharvok lives, extinguished in an instant." Elias flinched inwardly but held their ground. "Vetra 4 was a tragedy," they began, but the Tharvok silenced them with a sharp, clawed hand raised in fury. "Do not dare speak of tragedy," the Tharvok hissed. "You callously called it collateral damage in your war against the Zalar Confederacy. Do you deny this?" Elias's voice was firm but tinged with sorrow. "I don't deny the lives lost. But I also know the full context, which your records conveniently omit. The Zalar Confederacy had weaponized Vetra 4, turning it into a launch site for their planetary annihilation missiles. If humanity hadn't acted, the Tharvok homeworld itself might have been the next target." A murmur rippled through the chamber, though it was hard to tell whether it was one of intrigue or disdain. "You speak of justification, but the dead do not hear your reasoning," the Tharvok retorted, venom lacing their tone. Before Elias could respond, the hologram shifted again. This time, it showed a fleet of human ships surrounding an alien freighter. The freighter was disabled, its engines dark and its hull peppered with scorch marks. "The Viatar massacre," another council member said, their voice a low rumble. "This one belonged to the Nulquess, a species resembling bioluminescent jellyfish." Their words carried an almost hypnotic rhythm, but the condemnation was clear. A convoy of unarmed Viatar traders, slaughtered by human privateers for mere profit. Elias closed their eyes briefly, the weight of the accusation heavy. They knew this history well, too well. "I won't deny the actions of those privateers," Elias admitted. "They were criminals, and their greed brought shame to humanity. But humanity hunted them down, dismantling their fleets and ensuring they could never harm another Viatar ship again. That's the part you're not showing here." "How convenient," the Nulquess replied, their tendrils glowing faintly. "You act as both villain and savior, and you expect us to applaud the latter while ignoring the former." The holograms continued to shift, each one showcasing another dark chapter of humanity's expansion into the stars. There was the siege of Kalithra Prime, where human forces had allegedly used bioweapons against a Zarek outpost. Then the betrayal of Elysium Pact, where humanity had broken an alliance to gain control of a rare resource-rich asteroid field. And finally, the images of Earth itself, the wars, the ecological collapse, and the eventual exodus into space. With each new projection, Elias felt the chamber grow colder, the collective judgment of the council pressing down harder. They could see it in the eyes of the delegates, the disdain, the suspicion, the anger. To them, humanity wasn't just a species, it was a disease. "Elias Trent," the Tharl said, their voice cutting through the murmurs. "These are the legacies of your kind. Death. Betrayal. Destruction. Tell us, why should a species capable of such atrocities be remembered? Why should your name, your people, not be erased from history entirely?" The question hung in the air like a blade, poised to deliver the final blow. Elias took a deep breath, their mind racing. They knew this was coming. They had prepared for it. And yet, the sheer magnitude of it still threatened to overwhelm them. "Because this isn't the whole story," Elias said at last, their voice steady despite the storm raging around them. "You've shown the worst of us, yes. And I won't deny it. Humanity made mistakes, terrible ones. But every species in this chamber has its own dark chapters. You speak of our sins as if they define us, but they don't. What defines us is how we face those sins. How we fought to be better. How we paid the price for our mistakes and kept going." The murmurs grew louder now, some voices rising in agreement, others in opposition. Elias could see the divide forming, subtle but unmistakable. It was a start. Humanity was flawed, Elias continued. But we were also capable of greatness. You've seen the destruction. Now let me show you the redemption. The Tharl raised a hand, silencing the room. "You will have your chance to present your evidence," they said, their tone unreadable. "But understand this, Elias Trent, the burden of proof lies entirely on you. Fail to convince us, and humanity's name will be stricken from the annals of galactic history. Forever." Elias nodded, their jaw set with determination. They had come here knowing the odds were against them. But they also knew that humanity's story was worth fighting for. Worth remembering. As the holograms faded and the chamber's lights returned to their full brightness, Elias stood taller. The council could show every scar, every sin, every failure. But humanity's light had always shone brightest in the darkness. And Elias was determined to make them see it. Elias Trent walked out of the Galactic Council chamber into the dimly lit corridor, their footsteps echoing against the smooth metallic floor. The air was thick with tension, their chest heavy with the accusations still reverberating in their mind. Every dark chapter of humanity's history had been laid bare for the council, but Elias knew the story wasn't over yet. They needed allies, and they needed them now. The corridors of the council's citadel were labyrinthine, twisting and turning through the colossal structure that served as the heart of galactic governance. Delegates and aides of countless species moved with purpose, their expressions unreadable, their eyes darting toward Elias with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Humanity was a ghost here, a cautionary tale whispered across the stars, and Elias was the last remnant of that legacy. But they couldn't afford to dwell on that now. Their mission was clear: to convince someone, anyone, that humanity's story was worth preserving. Elias stopped at a tall set of arched doors engraved with intricate alien script. Behind them was the private chamber of Jorith Calver, a Tharvok elder and one of the most influential voices on the council. Elias's hand hesitated just for a moment before pressing the call pad. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a room bathed in warm crimson light. Jorith sat at the center of the chamber, their crimson-scaled body coiled on a raised dais. Their eyes, slit and piercing, locked onto Elias the moment they stepped inside. "Human," Jorith said, their voice low and gravelly, carrying a weight that matched their imposing presence. "I was expecting you." Elias took a deep breath, stepping forward until they stood just a few paces from the Tharvok elder. "Elder Jorith," Elias began, their tone respectful but firm. "I need your help. Humanity's legacy hangs in the balance, and the council's judgment is inevitable without your voice." Jorith tilted their head, their scales catching the light and reflecting it in a dazzling array of hues. "Help you?" Jorith's voice was tinged with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "And why should I do that, human? Your kind slaughtered millions of my people, left scars on our worlds that will never heal. Do you expect me to forget that?" Elias's jaw tightened, but they held Jorith's gaze. "I don't expect you to forget. I don't expect forgiveness. But I do expect you to remember the full truth." Jorith's eyes narrowed, their body shifting slightly on the dais. "Speak, then. What truth do you believe I have forgotten?" Elias reached into their satchel, pulling out a small holo projector. They activated it, and a three-dimensional image flickered to life. It showed a human ship, damaged, burning, but still moving, positioned between a Tharvok colony and an oncoming Zalor war fleet. The ship's weapons fired relentlessly, holding the line as long as it could. "The Battle of Kar Ridge," Elias said, their voice steady. "Your colony was defenseless, and the Zalor was ready to wipe it from existence. That human ship had every reason to retreat, its captain had no orders to stay. But they stayed anyway. They sacrificed everything to give your people time to evacuate. Thousands of Tharvok lives were saved because of that decision." The projection shifted, showing the human ship exploding in a brilliant flash as the Zalor fleet overwhelmed it. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the faint hum of the projector. Joratha's gaze lingered on the image, their expression unreadable. "I remember Kar Ridge," they said after a long pause. "I remember the evacuation, the chaos. But I also remember the losses that followed, the wars your kind ignited. A single act of valor does not erase centuries of pain." "No, it doesn't," Elias agreed. "But it's proof that humanity wasn't just destruction and greed. We were more than our worst moments. And if the Council erases us from history, you erase the lessons we left behind, the good and the bad." Joratha's eyes narrowed, their claws tapping lightly against the surface of the dais. The silence stretched on, tension coiling in the air like a living thing. "You're bold, human," Jorath said at last. "Perhaps too bold. But you are also persistent. That, at least, I can respect." Elias's heart lifted slightly, though they kept their expression neutral. "Does that mean you'll support me?" Jorath let out a low, rumbling sound that might have been a laugh. "Support you? No. Not yet. But I will give you this, I will not speak against you during the Council's deliberations. That is the most you can hope for from me." It wasn't the victory Elias had hoped for, but it was a start. They nodded, bowing slightly. "Thank you, Elder Jorath. That means more than you know." As Elias turned to leave, Joratha's voice stopped them. "Human," the Tharvok elder said, their tone softer now. "If you truly wish to change the Council's mind, you will need more than words and holograms. You will need someone willing to stand beside you, to stake their reputation on your cause. Someone the Council cannot ignore." Elias paused, the weight of Joratha's words sinking in. "And who would that be?" Joratha's gaze was piercing. "Find the Nullquest delegate. Convince them, and you might just stand a chance." Elias Trent sat in the shadow of the towering Nullquest embassy, their mind racing with the weight of Joratha's words. The Nullquest delegate, Tevralis, was known for their wisdom but also their impenetrable silence. Convincing them to publicly stand with humanity would be nothing short of a miracle. Still, if humanity was to have a chance, Elias had no choice but to try. The Nullquests were unlike any other species in the galaxy. Ethereal and bioluminescent, they floated gracefully in their aquatic chambers, their translucent forms shimmering with soft, shifting colors. Their communication was both vocal and through the subtle glow of their tendrils, each color and pattern conveying complex emotions and ideas. Elias had studied their culture, but no amount of preparation could make up for the fact that humans and Nullquests had rarely interacted beyond formalities. Elias approached the embassy doors, their reflection caught briefly in the rippling glass. The guards, two towering constructs of liquid metal, scanned them silently before stepping aside. As the doors slid open, Elias was greeted by a wave of cool, moist air and the faint hum of Nullquest's song, a sound that seemed to resonate directly within their chest. Inside, the main chamber was a marvel of engineering. A vast, spherical aquarium dominated the room, its walls pulsing with soft light. Within it, Tevralis floated serenely, their tendrils glowing in a gentle cascade of blues and greens. Several other Nullquests hovered nearby, their forms drifting in rhythmic harmony. Elias took a deep breath and stepped forward, bowing slightly as they addressed the delegate. Honored Tevralis, I am Elias Trent, a representative of humanity. I humbly seek your counsel. Tevralis turned slowly, their luminous eyes focusing on Elias. For a moment, they said nothing, their tendrils flickering in a pattern Elias couldn't interpret. Then, their voice emerged, melodic and layered, as if several tones were speaking at once. Human, Tevralis said, their tone neither warm nor cold. You stand before us, burdened by the weight of your species' history. What is it you seek? Elias stepped closer, their hands clasped tightly at their sides. I seek understanding. I seek a chance to prove that humanity is more than the darkness the Council has shown. And I seek your support, for without it, my voice will not carry far enough. The other Nalques exchanged glances, their tendrils flickering in rapid succession. Tevralis's colors shifted to a muted yellow, a hue Elias recognized as cautious contemplation. Your kind is known for destruction, Tevralis said. For ambition unchecked. Why should we risk aligning ourselves with you? Elias hesitated. They had prepared arguments, facts, and figures, but they knew this moment required something deeper. The Nalques valued emotion and sincerity above all else. Because you understand loss, Elias said quietly. Your species survived the luminal wars, your homeworld scarred by the conflict. You rebuilt, not just your cities but your trust in others. Humanity's journey has been similar. We've made mistakes, terrible ones, but we've also learned. And we've fought to be better. Tevralis's tendrils shifted, their light deepening to a somber violet. You presume much, human. Loss is universal, but understanding is not. Show us why we should trust you. Elias reached into their satchel, retrieving a small device. Activating it, they projected a hologram of Earth's final days before the Exodus. The image showed a planet ravaged by environmental collapse, its skies choked with ash and its oceans rising to swallow entire cities. Yet amidst the devastation were scenes of hope, humans working together to evacuate millions, scientists developing technologies to sustain life among the stars, and leaders putting aside differences to forge a united front. This was Earth, Elias said, their voice steady despite the lump forming in their throat. We nearly destroyed ourselves. But in our darkest hour, we found something worth saving. Each other. That's what humanity is. Not just the wars or the greed, but the resilience. The ability to rise, even when it seems impossible. The room was silent save for the faint hum of the aquarium's life support systems. Tevralis's light flickered in shades of blue and white, their gaze fixed on the hologram. You speak of resilience, they said at last. But words are fragile things. Actions endure. What actions can you show us? Elias felt a pang of frustration but quickly pushed it aside. I can show you the memorials we built for those we wronged. The treaties we upheld, even at great cost. The alliances we forged with those who once called us enemies. Humanity's story isn't perfect, but it's one of growth. And I believe that's a story worth remembering. Tevralis's light deepened to a contemplative green. They drifted closer to the edge of the tank, their luminous eyes meeting Elias's. Perhaps, they said softly, your species is not so different from our own. We, too, were judged harshly once. It was only through the courage of others that we were given a chance to prove ourselves. Perhaps it is time we extend the same to you. Elias's heart soared, but they kept their composure. Does that mean you'll stand with me? Tevralis's tendrils glowed a brilliant gold, the Nalques equivalent of a smile. We will speak on your behalf, Elias Trent. But know this, our support is not unconditional. If you falter, if you betray the trust we place in you, there will be no second chance. Elias bowed deeply, gratitude swelling within them. Thank you, Delegate Tevralis. You won't regret this. As Elias left the embassy, the weight on their shoulders felt slightly lighter. They had secured a powerful ally, but the road ahead was still fraught with challenges. The Council would not be easily swayed, and humanity's story was far from over. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with barely contained tension as the delegates reconvened. Every seat in the amphitheater-style room was occupied, representing dozens of species across the galaxy. Towering screens lined the walls, projecting feeds of the session to observers on distant worlds. The center of the chamber was bathed in harsh light, illuminating the circular dais where those seeking the Council's favor would stand. Elias Trent waited in the wings, their heart pounding. Securing the Nulquesa's support had been a victory, but it was far from enough. The Council's decision would depend on whether Elias could sway the undecided factions, those wavering between condemnation and cautious hope for humanity. The Council's High Arbiter, a crystalline being known as Chrysaor, raised one of their faceted appendages. The sound in the chamber died immediately, replaced by an expectant silence. Chrysaor's voice rang out, musical and sharp, amplified across the room. The matter of humanity's place in galactic history resumes. Representative Elias Trent, you have been granted one final opportunity to address this council. Proceed. Elias swallowed hard, stepping into the light. Their movements felt slow, deliberate, as if each step carried the weight of humanity's survival. They reached the dais and activated their holoprojector, casting an image of Earth's ruined surface into the air above them. Honored delegates, Elias began, their voice firm but edged with urgency. The Council has seen humanity's darkest moments. You have judged us for our wars, our destruction, and the pain we have caused. And you are right to do so. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Few expected Elias to open with an acknowledgement of guilt. They pressed on. But humanity is more than its mistakes. We are a species defined by contradiction, capable of both great cruelty and profound compassion. Today, I'm here to show you the other side of our story. The hologram shifted, displaying scenes of humanity's perseverance. Scientists working tirelessly to halt climate collapse, engineers constructing the first interstellar colony ships, and individuals risking their lives to save others during natural disasters. Each image was accompanied by a soft swell of music, underscoring the emotion behind each act. When faced with extinction, Elias said, humanity didn't surrender. We united. We fought for survival, not just for ourselves but for the countless species we share this galaxy with. The display transitioned again, this time showing the Battle of Car Ridge. The human ship's final stand against the Zalor invasion played out in vivid detail, its destruction buying precious time for Tharvok civilians to escape. The image lingered on the faces of the survivors, Tharvok children holding hands as they boarded evacuation ships, their eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. We've made sacrifices, Elias continued. Not for conquest, not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. That is the humanity I represent. That is the legacy I'm asking you to preserve. From the edge of the chamber, Joreth Calver watched intently, their crimson scales glinting in the dim light. The Tharvok elder had promised not to oppose Elias, but their silence had been conspicuous. Now, as the hologram faded, Joreth leaned forward, their expression unreadable. Delegate Trent, Chrysaor interjected, their crystalline voice cutting through the silence. Your words are compelling, but this council requires more than rhetoric. What assurances can you offer that humanity's resurgence will not lead to further harm? Elias straightened, meeting Chrysaor's prismatic gaze. We cannot erase the past, they said. But we can learn from it. Humanity's survival has taught us humility. Our presence in this galaxy will not be one of domination but of cooperation. We seek not to lead, but to stand beside you as equals. For a moment, the chamber was still. Then, a soft voice spoke from the upper tiers, amplified by the council's acoustics. It was Tevralis, their bioluminescent form glowing a radiant gold. The Nulquest support humanity's plea, Tevralis announced, their tone serene but resolute. We have seen the capacity for change within them. It would be unwise to extinguish a flame that has learned to burn brighter. The chamber erupted into murmurs, delegates turning to one another in hushed discussions. Tevralis's endorsement carried significant weight, but it was clear that doubt still lingered. Elias's eyes swept the room, searching for any sign of support. They caught Joratha's gaze and held it, silently pleading for the elder to speak. After a long pause, Jorath rose to their full height, their crimson scales shimmering like molten metal. I was there, Jorath said, their voice echoing across the chamber. At Fkar Ridge. I saw humanity's courage firsthand. They fought not for themselves, but for my people. That is a debt I have not forgotten. Elias's breath caught as Joratha's words settled over the room. The Tharvok elders' influence was immense, their support a turning point in the debate. Chrysaor raised their appendage once more, silencing the murmurs. The council will deliberate. Delegate Trent, you are dismissed until a decision is reached. As Elias stepped down from the dais, their heart pounded with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The tide was shifting, but the outcome remained uncertain. Humanity's future now hung on the fragile threads of trust and unity, threads Elias had done everything to weave together. Elias Trent sat in the council antechamber, their heart pounding with anticipation. The air was thick with the hum of machinery and muted conversations between aides and messengers. Through the vast, arched windows, the glittering expanse of space stretched endlessly, a reminder of what was at stake. Humanity's future lay on the edge of a blade, its fate soon to be decided by the Galactic Council. The door to the chamber hissed open, and Tevralis's glowing figure entered, their aquatic chamber moving gracefully across the floor. The Nulquest delegate's bioluminescence pulsed in calm, rhythmic patterns. Delegate Trent, Tevralis said, their serene voice breaking the silence. The council is deeply divided. Your words moved many, but centuries of mistrust are not so easily erased. Elias nodded, their shoulders heavy. I know. That's why I'm not done yet. Before Tevra could respond, the chamber doors opened again, revealing Jorath Calver. The Tharvok elder strode in with deliberate purpose, their crimson scales gleaming under the chamber's lights. They regarded Elias with a piercing gaze. You've done well, Jorath rumbled, their deep voice resonating in the confined space. But words will not be enough to sway the skeptics. They need proof, something tangible. Elias frowned. Proof? What kind of proof? Tevralis's luminescence dimmed slightly, a sign of concern. Perhaps an act that demonstrates humanity's commitment to the greater good. Something undeniable. Elias's mind raced. They thought of the Zalor, the relentless invaders who had brought ruin to so many civilizations, including humanity. The Council had long struggled to counter the Zalor threat, their combined fleets barely holding the line. What if humanity could tip the balance? The Zalor fleet, Elias said slowly, their voice steadying as the idea took shape. If humanity's remaining forces can help turn the tide in the ongoing battles, it would prove our worth. It would show that we're willing to risk everything for the galaxy's survival. Joratha's eyes narrowed. A bold gamble. But one that could work. The Zalor have amassed a fleet near the Arcanes Nebula. A coordinated strike there could cripple their advance. Tevralis's glow brightened, their voice tinged with hope. If humanity were to lead such an effort, it would indeed be a compelling argument for your inclusion in the galactic fold. Elias stood, their resolve hardening. Then we'll do it. I'll call on the remnants of our fleet. We'll fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone. The antechamber fell silent as the weight of the decision settled over them. Tevralis and Jorath exchanged a glance, their shared respect for Elias evident. Very well, Jorath said. I will present this proposal to the council. If they agree, humanity will have its chance to prove its worth. As the delegates departed, Elias turned back to the window, staring into the vastness of space. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but it was also humanity's last, best hope. They would rise to the challenge, or perish trying. The stars over the Arcanes Nebula seemed to ripple and pulse, distorted by the gravitational waves of the nearby Zalor fleet. The nebula itself was a sprawling cosmic storm, its colorful tendrils of gas and plasma casting eerie, shifting lights across the black void of space. In the midst of this celestial chaos, humanity's fleet stood ready, a patchwork armada of battered starships, each scarred by years of conflict and desperation. Elias Trent stood on the command deck of the Resolute Dawn, humanity's flagship. The ship's bridge hummed with energy as officers relayed commands and checked the battle systems. The tension was palpable, and every crew member aware of the stakes. Around them, holographic displays showed the positions of both the human fleet and the Zalor forces, the latter a dense mass of crimson markers that far outnumbered their own. "Status report," Elias said, their voice steady despite the weight pressing down on their chest. "The fleet is in position," replied Commander Vela, her sharp features illuminated by the glow of her console. "All ships report ready, but our numbers," she hesitated, then continued. "We're outgunned 4-1. "I know," Elias said, their gaze fixed on the main display. "But we're not here to win by brute force. We just need to disrupt them enough for the Council's reinforcements to arrive." The plan was audacious. Humanity's fleet would act as a spearhead, striking at the Zalor's supply lines and forcing them into disarray. If successful, it would give the Galactic Council's combined forces a chance to regroup and launch a decisive counterattack. Failure, however, would mean annihilation, not just for humanity, but for countless other species. A sudden alert broke the tense silence. "Zalor ships are advancing," an officer called out. "They've detected us." Elias straightened, their jaw tightening. "All ships, prepare for engagement. Remember the plan, hit their supply convoy and draw their attention. We don't stop until the Council arrives." The comms officer nodded, transmitting the order across the fleet. Moments later, the human ships surged forward, their engines burning bright against the darkness. The Zalor fleet responded in kind, their ominous crimson vessels slicing through space like predatory beasts. As the first wave of enemy ships closed in, the Resolute Dawn unleashed its opening salvo. Beams of searing light and trails of high-yield missiles streaked across the void, slamming into the Zalor formation. Explosions erupted in the distance, but the enemy pressed on, undeterred. "Concentrate fire on their lead ships," Elias commanded. "We need to punch through and reach the convoy." The battle unfolded in a chaotic symphony of destruction. Human ships maneuvered with desperate precision, their smaller size and agility their only advantages. The Zalor countered with overwhelming firepower, their weapons carving through the human ranks. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. "Council reinforcements ETA?" Elias demanded as the ship shook violently under enemy fire. "Still 15 minutes out," Commander Vela replied. "We'll be lucky if we last half that long." Elias's hands tightened into fists. "We'll last. We have to." As the Resolute Dawn pressed deeper into the fray, Elias glanced at the crew around them. Every face was etched with determination, and each person committed to the fight despite the odds. Humanity had been on the brink before, and it was in these moments that they had always found a way to endure. "We're not just fighting for Earth," Elias said quietly, their voice carrying through the bridge. "We're fighting for every world that's suffered under the Zalor. For every species that's lost their home. We're fighting for the galaxy." Their words resonated, a rallying cry that ignited a spark in the crew. The Resolute Dawn surged forward, leading the charge as humanity's gamble played out among the stars. A chaotic space battle unfolding near the Arcanes Nebula, with colorful tendrils of gas and plasma swirling in the background. In the foreground, the Resolute Dawn, a massive yet battered human flagship, leads a fleet of smaller ships, their engines blazing. The human fleet is firing beams of light and missiles at an advancing wave of ominous Crimson Zalar ships, which are larger and more menacing. Explosions light up the void as ships on both sides are destroyed. Amidst the chaos, the nebula's vibrant colors contrast with the dark void of space, emphasizing both beauty and destruction. The Resolute Dawn groaned under the strain of repeated hits, its shields flickering like dying embers. The bridge was a cacophony of alarms, shouted orders, and the occasional explosion from overloaded systems. Elias Trent clung to their station, their eyes locked on the tactical display. The Zalar forces were closing in, their crimson ships an unrelenting tide. "Target destroyed, Captain," an officer called out. "But we lost the Silver Horizon in the process." Elias winced but didn't falter. The losses were mounting, but the fleet had made it this far. They were deep within enemy lines now, and the Zalar supply convoy was in sight, a cluster of massive, heavily fortified freighters. "Focus fire on their escorts," Elias ordered. "We have to break their defense screen before we can hit the convoy." The ship shuddered violently as another enemy barrage connected. Sparks flew from a nearby console, and an officer was thrown from their seat. Smoke began to fill parts of the bridge, but no one stopped to acknowledge the chaos. Every second counted. The Resolute Dawn launched another volley of missiles, their fiery trails cutting through the void. 2 enemy escorts erupted in flames, but the remaining ships closed ranks, redoubling their assault. "Shields at 20%, a technician yelled. "We can't take much more of this." Elias clenched their teeth. "We don't need to take much more. Just hold." Across the fleet, the other human ships followed suit, throwing everything they had into the fight. The smaller vessels darted between enemy fire, targeting weak points with surgical precision. The larger ships, battered and burning, absorbed the brunt of the Zalar's attacks, buying precious seconds for the assault. "We've breached their line," Commander Vela shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "Convoy is exposed." Elias felt a surge of hope. "All units, focus on the convoy. Disable their engines and warp drives. We can't let them retreat." The fleet shifted its focus, unleashing a relentless barrage on the massive Zalar freighters. One by one, the convoy's ships began to falter, their engines flickering before going dark. But the Zalar wasn't done yet. Reinforcements were closing in, a fresh wave of Crimson warships threatened to overwhelm the human fleet. "Reinforcements inbound," Vela warned, her tone grim. "We're running out of time." Elias nodded. "Transmit our coordinates to the Council fleet. Tell them we need that support now." A sudden flash lit up the tactical display as a human destroyer was obliterated by the incoming Zalar wave. The tide was turning against them, but Elias refused to back down. They activated the fleet-wide comm channel, their voice resolute. "This is it," they said. "No retreat, no surrender. We hold the line. For Earth. For the galaxy." Across the fleet, the human crews rallied, their resolve unshaken despite the odds. The Zalar reinforcements closed in, but the humans fought on, their determination blazing brighter than the fires consuming their ships. The Resolute Dawn hung on by a thread, its hull scarred and bleeding atmosphere into the void. Fires raged in several compartments, and emergency shutters had sealed entire sections of the ship to prevent further loss of life. Yet, the command deck remained operational, and Elias Trent stood firm, gripping the railing as the tactical display updated. The Zalar reinforcements were tearing through the human fleet. Ship after ship disappeared from the display, their markers replaced by ominous static. Despite the carnage, humanity's remaining forces continued to fight with a ferocity born of desperation. Their relentless attacks had crippled the Zalor convoy but at a steep cost. "Commander Vela," Elias said, their voice steadied despite the chaos around them. "How many ships do we still have in play?" Vela scanned her console, her expression grim. 15 combat-capable, including the Resolute Dawn. Another 10 are heavily damaged but holding position. Elias nodded. "It's enough. We've made it this far. We're not backing down now." The ship's lights flickered as another impact rocked the vessel. Sparks flew from a nearby console, and an officer scrambled to extinguish a small fire. The bridge crew worked tirelessly, their movements precise despite the chaos. They all knew what was at stake. "Incoming transmission from the Council fleet," the comms officer announced, their voice cutting through the noise. "They've arrived at the edge of the nebula and are moving to engage the Zalor." A wave of relief washed over the bridge. Elias allowed themselves a brief moment to exhale before focusing again. "Tell them we've secured the convoy. Their reinforcements can focus on neutralizing the remaining Zalor forces." As the message was sent, the tactical display showed new markers appearing on the battlefield. Sleek, advanced ships of the Galactic Council's combined fleet entered the fray, their weapons cutting through the Zalor with precision. The tide was finally turning. "Captain," Vela said, her voice tinged with awe. "The Council's flagships are deploying their main batteries. They're targeting the Zalor command vessel." Elias nodded. "Good. Let's make sure they have a clear path. All remaining ships, focus fire on the Zalor escorts. Draw their attention away from the Council fleet." The human ships rallied for one final push. The Resolute Dawn led the charge, its weapons blazing as it tore into the enemy ranks. The Zalor fought back with their usual ferocity, but their formation was beginning to crumble under the combined assault. "Captain, the Zalor command vessel is taking heavy damage," Vela reported. "The Council fleet is pressing the advantage." Elias felt a spark of hope ignite within them. For the first time in years, victory seemed within reach. But they knew better than to celebrate too early. "Stay on target," Elias said firmly. "We're not done yet." As the battle raged on, the combined might of humanity and the Galactic Council began to overwhelm the Zalor. Ships that had once seemed invincible now faltered and fell, their crimson hulls breaking apart under the relentless assault. The nebula's vibrant colors were soon eclipsed by the fiery wreckage of the Zalor fleet, a testament to the price of defiance. Elias's words resonated across the fleet. On every bridge, in every engine room, on every gun deck, weary crews straightened, their determination rekindled. The battered remnants of humanity and the Galactic Council stood as one. "This is the moment we show them that unity, not fear, is the greatest power in this galaxy. Together, we will not fall. Together, we will break the Zalor. For Earth. For the Council. For the galaxy." The fleet responded with renewed vigor. Ships surged forward, weapons blazing as they tore into the Zalor forces. The Council's flagship, a sleek and powerful dreadnought, targeted the Zalor command vessel, its massive energy cannons firing with deadly precision. The command vessel's shields faltered, then failed, its hull splitting apart in a catastrophic explosion. The Zalor fleet hesitated, their cohesion shattered. But the humans and the Council didn't relent. They pressed the attack, driving the enemy back into the nebula. One by one, the remaining Zalor ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, a tense silence fell as the last Zalor ship disappeared from the tactical display. The crew erupted into cheers, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the euphoria of victory. Elias allowed themselves a small, weary smile. "We did it," Vela said, her voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." Elias nodded. "We held the line. And we showed the galaxy what we're capable of." The cost had been staggering. Thousands of lives were lost, and dozens of ships were destroyed. But for the first time in decades, the Zalor had been defeated. Humanity and the Galactic Council had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, hope could prevail. As the fleet began to regroup, Elias looked out at the stars, their heart heavy but determined. The war wasn't over, but this victory had shown that it could be won. And as long as there was something worth fighting for, they would keep going. Together. And so, this chapter of humanity's defiance comes to a close, but the story of our resilience has only just begun. If you're as captivated by humanity's unyielding fight for survival as I am, don't forget to join the Galactic Humanity community. Together, we explore the stories of courage, innovation, and hope that define us all. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell icon so you never miss a new chapter. Share your thoughts in the comments. What inspires you most about humanity's place in the stars? Until next time, keep dreaming big, because the galaxy is watching.